at least I'm traveling here, and I'm very happy to see the beauty that Kenya has to offer. But it's not cheap. We just have to say the truth. It's not cheap.
It can be expensive. It can be expensive.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Wale O, and here beside me is Amarachi, and we are here to make a video on cost of living in Kenya. If this sounds like your cup of tea, sit down, relax, grab a popcorn, and let's get into this video. So before we get into the video, you guys know, as every YouTuber has to do, I have to do some self-promo. How do we start this self-promo? Why is my brain skipping? Okay, let me do that again. So before we get into the video, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Wale O. I'm a content creator based in Germany, and I make content about moving abroad, living abroad, travel, career, and so on. And this is Amarachi. Can you introduce yourself a bit?
Yeah, my name is Amarachi. I'm a travel blogger. I blog at travelwithapen.com, where I share my personal experiences traveling within different countries, and I encourage other people to travel as well. And yeah, that's it about me.
Yes, and if you want to follow us on social media, you can follow me on TikTok and Instagram. It's at Wale O Chronicles, and you can follow Amarachi where?
Amarachi Ekekwe on Instagram.
Exactly. So you can find us on Instagram. So now, with all that self-promo out of the way, let's get into why you're here, which is the cost of living in Kenya. So in the previous video, we already talked about what it's like living in Kenya, or living in Nairobi, Kenya, as a foreigner or as an expat, or however you want to call it. If you've not watched that video, please make sure you watch that video either after this video, or watch it after this video. Makes more sense. So today we're going to talk about the money aspect, because that's a very important part of moving to a new country or living in a new country and so on. So Amarachi, you're going to be the one to give us all the money details, because you are the one that has been living here for 3 years. Yes. So I know you already did a brief introduction in the previous video, but for the people who haven't watched that video, can you give us a brief introduction about yourself and how you ended up in Kenya, and then we can talk about the money.
Okay, so I already introduced myself and what I do. I'm also actually I'm a software engineer. I have a job outside travel blogging, and I was living in Nigeria for all my life essentially, and then I got married, and my husband's job transferred him to Kenya, and then I asked for the transfer as well from my company, and luckily they agreed. So we moved here in August of 2020, and we've been living here since.
Yeah, so if you want to find out more details about her life, how she moved here, the job process, everything, you can watch the video we made before. So speaking about cost of living, the biggest cost of living for every person, well, normal people, is usually accommodation.
Sure. So
in the other video we talked about how to find accommodation, but can you tell us briefly, like, as a foreigner living in I wanted to say Germany, because I'm so used to talking about Germany. As a foreigner living in Kenya, what should be your budgets for accommodation, from a 1-bedroom flat to a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom to a cottage, and so on?
Okay, so I think the what you pay in rent will depend on where you live, and I think that most foreigners like to live close to work. I mean, it makes sense to live close to work, and a lot of businesses are in a place called Westlands and Parklands. So that's where I also have experience living in, because my office is in the same area. And I think that while we were looking for accommodation, we found different options ranging from, I'd say, from $650 in this area. Obviously, if you live outside Westlands, outside Parklands, then it can get cheaper. But just based on my experience and the places we looked, from $650 a month, because rent here is monthly, unlike Lagos, where you have to pay maybe 2 years even in advance. But so 650, and I'll say the upper limit was like 3,000, 3,005. I've seen rents up to that area.
Is that for like a villa or what?
Well, it's like maybe I think what we saw for 3,000 was like a 5-bedroom apartment. but like
But it's still an apartment. It's not like
for a 5-bedroom house. So
a house, okay, with a garden and everything,
yes.
and a pool and all that.
Yes, well, it's very luxurious.
Okay, so I mean,
So
for people coming from maybe North America, Europe, and stuff, 3,000 for such a big.
Yeah, it's like a steal.
Yeah, it's a steal. So, and please, before you come in the comment section and start arguing, we are talking about cost of living as a foreigner, as an expat living in Kenya. Of course, if you are a local, then you can get better deals than we can get, because you know like how the stuff goes. It's just
And
like
where to
if
look,
exactly, you know where to look, you know what the real rates are and not the inflated rates for foreigners. So of course, if you are a Kenyan person living in Kenya, your idea of the cost of accommodation would be very different from what a foreigner would get, because a foreigner would probably get something more inflated, right?
Yeah, so it might make sense as a foreigner to have like a Kenyan friend help you
Yeah,
look for places.
absolutely. Then you get good deals. So Amarachi is just speaking from experience, okay? Don't shoot the messenger. All right.
Yeah, but like I mean, again, 3,000 is like super high end. Like that's way out there. I don't think that's what everyone here pays.
No, definitely.
You get more closer to the lower limits of the scale I just mentioned.
Okay. Yeah. So but it's, you said from 650, so it's still possible, because I think I saw some things for like 500, 550.
Were they furnished or unfurnished?
Unfurnished.
Okay.
Unfurnished.
Yeah, I feel like unfurnished would be cheaper. Furnished would be more expensive. But yeah, I mean the range is just up to you and up to the place where you look and where you stay. So yeah.
And I find that also many of the accommodations come with pools and gyms. Not all of them, but some of them come with pools, and some of them come with gyms and saunas. And I saw a place that is going for 600 euros. I don't know how much that is in dollars, but 600 euros, $600, I don't remember, 600 something per month. And it had a gym, it had a sauna, it was like a studio apartment, and it had a gym, it had a sauna, it had a pool. And I was like, luxury! You can only dream about something like that in Europe or North America, for example. All right, let's talk about the next cost. Of course, the next most important thing is food, eating, groceries. So we'll talk about eating out separately. Let's just talk about groceries in general. Like, how much do you think you would spend per week or per month on groceries, as maybe like a couple with no children, or as a single person on your own?
Yeah, so I think that generally I would say the rule of thumb is, if it's made in Kenya, then it's cheaper. Then if it's imported, then it's more expensive. So like veggies, I find veggies here to be very cheap, very fresh, very nice. So good job, Kenya. So I think a grocery budget of, it depends on your preferences, how you eat. I'd say maybe $60 to $100 for a couple makes sense every week. I would say. So again, your preference will determine how high or low that scale is. I know when my husband is away, like my groceries budgets are like maybe $40-50. But when we're together, then it gets a bit higher. So
yeah, men consume all the food.
All the delicious stuff, and
yeah, so you spend more money if you have a man living with you. So maybe the secret to living on the budget, don't live with a man. Okay, let's move on. So since we're talking about food now, before we move to the other important costs of living, I want to talk about eating out, because this is an area that I found very interesting, and you can tell I have something to say about eating out here. So can you tell us, like, what would you budget, like what are the restaurant types, and what's the range for each type of restaurant, like low, like super low end, like basic, the mid-range restaurants, and high-end restaurants? How much do you think you expect to spend in these types of restaurants?
Okay, so I think, first of all, I'd say, like, for Kenya, I feel like the range is kind of similar across board. I'm talking about the high-end mid-range restaurants, which I think is a good thing, because I feel like in Lagos, you could go to one restaurant in VI and then the price is this amount, and then you could go to another one and it's like super high or super low. It's very different. But I feel like in Kenya, it's a bit, you can expect the same amount in many restaurants. So having said that, I think the super low restaurants, you can get meals as low as 200 bob, 500 bob. That's like shillings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Kenyan now, so I have to use the slangs. Anyway.
I've been hearing that bob thing a lot.
So you can expect that, and then on the other side, you can expect from like 1,000 shillings, 1,200, 1,300, something like that. Yeah.
And that's like how much? That's like.
That's like I mean the
In
dollar
dollars.
is changing a bit, but just to be conservative, I think maybe 1,000 shillings is like, it used to be like $10, but maybe now it's like $9 or $8.
Okay.
So yeah,
So that's for the lower end of the scale.
that's I would say that's from like mid to high end scale. Like if you go to a high end restaurant, it will be more than 1,000, obviously, depending on what you eat. Yeah,
I've been saying more than 1,000 for sure.
Yeah. And I mean I always say this, like there is the super low end restaurants, and then there is the high end restaurants, and I feel like what's something I think we had in Nigeria that don't necessarily have here, or I haven't seen here, is like the middle range restaurants, where I'm not talking about fast foods like KFC because they have that here, but I'm talking about like restaurants that are in a nice area. They sell local food, but the price is not expensive. It's like still reasonable. I feel like I haven't seen much of that here, and that's something I miss. But yeah, you can find different kind of restaurant classes in Kenya.
Yeah, I personally find that eating out in Kenya is not as cheap as you would think. If you think African countries are cheap, then you are in for a shock, especially when it comes to eating out in Kenya specifically. Because I find that, I mean, I don't know if these restaurants are mid-range or high-end. I would not consider them high-end, like fine dining. No, I would consider them more like mid-range restaurants. And they're not cheap. They're like, the prices are equivalent to what I would spend on a regular mid-range restaurant in Berlin, for example, in Germany. So that was quite kind of like a shock for me, because I wasn't expecting eating out to be as expensive as it is in Kenya here. I thought it would be more like I mean, eating out in South Africa, for example, is cheap. My God, it's cheap. I love it. Maybe that's where I should go next.
Yeah, I think Kenya is a bit expensive city to live in. I feel like coming from Nigeria, I haven't lived in many places, but coming from Nigeria, I find Kenya to be more expensive than living in Lagos, for example.
Let's talk about transportation, right? At least one thing is cheap here. Transportation.
Yeah.
So let's talk about like the budgeting for transportation. If you have your own car, for example, what's it going to cost you? Or if you decide to take a taxi every day, or you want to take the local transport, which is matatu.
Matatus, yeah.
So that's a local bus. How much is that going to cost you, and so on, like that?
Yeah, so I think transportation is fairly cheap. I think fuel prices are a bit higher than what we pay in Lagos, but just generally, like the matatus are quite cheap. I've been in a matatu just once, but it was very affordable. And for Ubers as well, I think that, I mean, Ubers are it's super convenient to use Ubers here, and I would also place them in a cheap category. Yeah, I would say it's not too expensive, but makes sense. Yeah.
Can you give us prices, figures?
Sure. Like unfortunately, I can't do distances. But I'll say like maybe a 20-minute ride could be, I don't know, depending on the time you choose, like 350 shillings, like $3, something like that. Yeah, from Westlands to the airport, it could be like $12. So it's not too expensive.
Yeah, I also find that using Uber here very convenient and actually quite cheap. Just like she said, you take a ride, sometimes you can pay €2 or €3 for the ride. But I went in the matatu once also with a Kenyan friend of mine, and it was 50 bob, like you said. So that's less than $1 or less than €1. But the thing I find interesting about transportation, how can you tell where these matatus are going? Because it's not like a tram stop where you can say, okay, this is where I'm gonna stop. Like, how can you, if I want to go from here to maybe like CBD, how do I know which which matatu
Matatu
to
to
get
go in,
into,
yeah.
and which stop should I stop if I'm not a Kenyan person who is already familiar with the route.
Yeah, I'm in the same shoes as you,
After
unfortunately. But,
you see the
but I think for me, I just ask the bus conductor. It's like I'm going to CBD, and then they're very kind in the way like they remember what you asked for, and they will drop you off where you need to go to. It's easier when you take the buses from the parks. Like because they have all the signs where they mention where the buses are going to. But it's like if you come out of the house right now and you need to go to CBD, which bus do you go in? Yeah, so that's I'm not sure. I feel like if you just stop a random bus and you tell the driver where you're going to, they can help direct you a bit.
Yeah, or just take an Uber and save yourself this
the
pain of getting lost.
Yeah. But I really do wish that like African countries, I mean not just Kenya alone, even Nigeria would step up our public transportation systems. Like you can't even overestimate how important it is to have like trams and metros and you could just have the stops on the sign, and then when it stops at the station you get off. Honestly, it's so easy.
Like
yeah.
I have no words for when it comes to that. Like that's a whole another level of discussion. So the next cost that we want to discuss, utilities. So your internet, your electricity, water bill, is that usually included in the accommodation price, or it's separate?
So it depends on the accommodation. Like some people would include it in theirs. So it depends on like the contract you have with your landlord or the owner of the house. Some people include it in the rent, some people don't. So and then when they don't, it's not too expensive as well. Like I find the water bills, the electricity bills, the electricity is based on your usage, and if you use electricity like a normal person, then it's not super expensive. You could pay like I don't know $30-40 a month. Same as water. And then internet also, I think internet here it's quite cheap and also super fast. It's really good.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. I'm very, very impressed, I have to say.
Yeah, it's good. It's very good. And also like not expensive. Like we use how much do we pay? I think we pay like $50 a month for like an unlimited package. I'm sure there's a cap somewhere, but we never reach the cap, so I never realize if it's on limited or not. But it's really good, super fast, and quite satisfied.
That's good. So let's go on to the next cost. So the next cost we're going to talk about is kind of like optional if you want to, if you don't want to. So we talk about the cost of leisure activities. So like excluding eating out, of course. Like we already mentioned in the previous video, there are so many things to do in Kenya, right? So like leisure activities, how much should you budget every month for leisure activities if you like to travel? But let's say now traveling within Kenya, and not, so if you want to do a day trip somewhere to Nairobi or that place, if you want to travel, do a day trip there, or you want to go to the national park in Nairobi, watch my Kenyan vlog. You will see all these things I'm mentioning. So if you want to budget something like that every month, you want to do something interesting related to travel or exploration, how much should you budget?
So per person, I would say at least, I feel like $10K, which is like $100, is a good amount to budget. Depending on where you go, it could take you far. It could not even scratch the surface of things. Because I think that traveling in Kenya can be a bit expensive.
It's not cheap. Let's call it spade a spade. She's trying to be diplomatic because y'all attacked her in one video that she made, but ain't no attacking happening on my channel. I'll block you, okay? Because we're here to say the truth.
No, you can do it.
It ain't cheap. At least I'm traveling here, and I'm very happy to see the beauty that Kenya has to offer. But it's not cheap. We just have to say the truth. It's not cheap.
It can be expensive. It can be expensive. Especially if you're a foreigner, because like if you're a local, you could even get some discounts. In the national park. The prices are different for locals, for residents, and for foreigners. So it depends. Yeah, but if you already live here, I think that it can be super expensive. Like the nice lodges are very expensive.
Yes.
So you would need to like do some cost cutting, but you can find like mid-range options as well. But again, mid-range does not necessarily mean dirt cheap.
No.
It still costs some money.
Yeah.
But it's not too cheap.
Yeah. I find that travel in Kenya is a bit more expensive than maybe like budget, your idea of budget traveling in Southeast Asia, for example, how
Yeah,
much
for
like
sure.
your money will go much farther than here in Kenya.
For sure.
And this comes back to the myth again that you think, like some people think, oh, it's an African country, it must be cheap. You're in for a shock, baby.
Yeah, the bucket list worthy experiences are very expensive.
Yeah,
so
true.
you need to save up your coins for that.
Yeah, because I remember going to the Nairobi National Park, and I'm not a resident and I'm not a like. So okay, I'm so happy that I have the opportunity to talk about this on the internet. So they have a price for non-residents and they have price for
Locals and
locals,
like the citizens
so,
and residents.
And they also have price for East African people. No. The price for East African people, I think they can also pay as residents or something, as local, something like that. So I was now like, what about all the other African people, like we from West Africa, for example? Do we not get, at least, okay, if people from Europe or people from America, they have to pay the foreigners' fees, which is quite high. Me, I'm African. Actually, people speak Swahili to me thinking that I'm from Kenya, and then I, of course, cannot respond, and I feel so, and I wish I could pass for Kenyan, but I cannot. So then they realize I'm not Kenyan. So I'm like, what about the other African people? Don't we at least we are motherland people? Why should we be paying the same price like the European folks and the North American folks? It's not fair. But anyway, the point I was trying to make is that it's not as cheap as you would think it would be. All right, so that's all the cost we could think about for this video. If there are any costs that we actually missed, leave it in the comment section, let us know. And if Amarachi is in the mood, if y'all are not attacking her, then she will answer. If not, no, I'm just joking. As you can tell, I like to make a lot of fun and jokes on my channel. We're here to share information in a light-hearted manner and to exchange ideas. It's not anything serious or deep. All right, so thank you very much for watching this video. Don't forget to follow Amarachi on Instagram. Tell us your Instagram handle.
Amarachi Kekwe.
And don't forget to go on her blog. She has a ton of blog posts about Kenya. Anytime I want to travel somewhere, I always go to her. When I wanted to go to Watamu, I read your Watamu blog. So leave your blog website. We'll leave it on the screen as well. Tell us so that people can go there and read more about Kenya and all your other trips.
Sure. So it's www.travelwithapen.com.
Perfect. And for me, just, you know what you can do. Subscribe to my channel, like this video, follow me on Instagram and TikTok. It's at Wale Chronicles. And thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.